everyone. I'm Jayne Groll, CEO of the DevOps Institute. We're here at DevOps World, formerly known as Jenkins World. Yep. So there's certainly an evolution going on this week as well in lovely San Francisco. I'm joined by Wayne from Tricentis, kind of the Wayne and Jayne show we were joking about before time. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's hard when it's usually Wayne's World. Now I got to share it with you, right?
Well, now it's Jayne's World, right? So Wayne, we're going to talk a little bit about Tricentis, but I think that the theme of the conference this week is transformation.
Yes.
And if I've observed any kind of evolution of transformation over the last several years, certainly testing has become a competency that really crosses over the entire spectrum. So tell us a little bit about Tricentis. Certainly tell us a lot about testing.
Sure.
And then we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on at the conference this week.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So for folks who do not know, Tricentis is basically an organization that is focused on transforming testing for DevOps. Because bringing it all together, we know it has to change. It's imperative, right? So first of all, if you look at the major motion associated with testing today, it's primarily manual. So, I mean, that just goes right against the grain associated with DevOps in the first place, and we know we got to make a change there. The second thing is that if you increase the speed of anything, the speed bumps you hit hurt more. And I couldn't think of a better analogy for testing, because testing usually stops the process, or the quality cadence that you require in order to reduce the risk to your organization is something that is a start-stop process today, and it has to be removed. Tricentis is in the business of smoothing that out. So if you're a Global 2000 organization and you know you have systems that you use more for your front end for engagement, and we know that you have a big back end set of systems that are dependent to those actual front end systems, we actually smooth that cadence out and allow the actual testing process to be continuous, or like what we call continuous testing.
So, it's really interesting that you share that, because handoffs, right? The no handoffs is kind of one of the mantras of DevOps. And certainly shift left is the other.
Yes.
And so when we start to look at traditional IT, it was always testing was a downstream activity.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So the agile teams would produce something, and it would go into some type of release process, and part of that QA would be engaged. And there was a barrier, because it could be a 2-week sprint that had 2 months ahead of it downstream. And so testing, I speak a lot about skills. And I think that testing is a skill that, regardless of whether you're DevOps, security, or anyone else, you have to become not only familiar with testing, but you have to embrace the concept of continuous testing and automated testing. So I think Tricentis really brings that into the center.
Absolutely. So I think that's a really good synopsis of the evolution of, I think, where testing is today, by the way, Jayne. Thank you for that. I should have I'm glad we recorded it. But number two, I think there's another interesting paradigm going on, is that testing, as you mentioned, was a time-boxed event that happened at the end of the cycle. As we, quote unquote, matured, it became its own sprint.
Right.
And then we started to scratch our head and say, hey, should we really be having a testing sprint? And if we do, are we really done? Are we agile? And people began to say, no, it doesn't feel right. Let's move the process back. But it's not necessarily the shift left. And I think it's a misnomer, because it's a shift left, it's a shift right, it's a shift everywhere. And I think this is where the actual idea of quality is beginning to morph. And we're not there yet, by the way. We're pretty far away.
Yeah,
so if you look at most enterprises today, roughly 80% of the testing is happening manually, if at all. Okay? A lot of that's still offshore. So with that actually interruption and that no handoff kind of mantra, we're really hitting a lot of barriers to what you would say is a streamlined process. So the evolution, there's a lot to look forward to. So the definition of continuous testing, which is on Wikipedia, which I wrote, is actually that you get feedback at the right time to the right person, with one more caveat: it's actionable. So the biggest problem we faced with testing is we went out, we built these huge regression suites, whether they were unit tests or functional tests, and we ran them, and we ran them, and we ran them, and what did we say? We asked if we were done testing. And it's the wrong question, right? It's like, are you done? What does it matter? The real question is, is the release acceptable, right? And can we go? And we're pretty far away from that right now. And this is where the idea of just shift left isn't going to solve the problem. It means that we need a comprehensive delivery definition for quality, and every stakeholder is playing their role. Because as you know, in every organization, the makeup of who actually makes that or is basically contributing to the release is going to shift a little bit.
So, what's really interesting about it, I think you're absolutely right. I think shift
I'm glad
left.
because I've been in the testing space for a long time.
Yeah, no. What I think you're particularly right about is that we've been kind of expounding shift left, but it is shift everywhere.
It's shift everywhere.
Right?
Yeah.
It's shift everywhere. And with everything as code and quality and value, right,
Absolutely.
certainly being part of this, systems thinking. And if we really have to start to look at that, then testing is pervasive, first of all. It has to be. And then also, I think one of the barriers to DevOps at the enterprise level is risk.
Absolutely.
Right? So when we start to look at risk at the enterprise level, they're like, wait a minute, we have compliance issues, we have governance issues. We can't take the chance of using a bunch of open source tools and suddenly start sending things into production minute by minute by minute. So I think that when we start to look at testing as an organizational capability, more than just an individual competency, hopefully that solves some of that.
So a couple interesting points, I think. It really shouldn't matter what you're using to achieve quality. Okay?
I agree.
Meaning that if you're able to, one, get the feedback to the right person, which is actionable at the right time, you're doing a really good job. Now, the coordination of that is a totally different subject, right? And we're going to be using different tools that provide different speeds or different levels of automation, depending on the architectures that we have within the organization. Now, as coming from the DevOps Institute, I'm sure that you guys see Global 2000 organizations in which the CIO is coming in and telling you we have 12,500 applications that are running within the various incarnations of the system via merger, via growth, via legacy, right? And bringing that all together so you can actually remove what is known as this process cadence mismatch in testing is critical. And there's ways to do that today. Tricentis focuses on this. So we focus on trying to bring those big legacy systems in line with the more nimble systems so you can actually have a merged cadence to hit that release cycle. And this is huge, huge for digital transformation and huge for innovative type agendas.
And huge, particularly for those very large, very legacy, complex organizations that are not something that were born 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but have a long history there.
And that's actually another great point that you made earlier, is that some of these organizations that were 5 guys in the garage who are now 40 guys in the garage, these guys they're born with testing because they had to do it, right?
It's in their DNA,
It's in their DNA. Their infrastructure is componentized. They have, basically microservices on top of cloud native infrastructures, right? Which gives them the flexibility to do that. But the Global 2000 organizations who are trying to move through this innovative cycle really needs to reinvent software testing.
Yeah, I agree. So I've been hearing a lot about Tricentis in the news lately.
Oh, really? Did someone tee you up to say that?
Like, that kind of hallway buzz.
Yeah.
So share a little bit of what's going on with Tricentis.
Thank you for asking, since I didn't ask you to ask that question. So Tricentis, actually, it's been a pretty exciting time. So first of all, we're recognized as a leader by all 3 major analysts. The leader in Forrester, leader with Gartner's Magic Quadrant, and the leader in IDC, which is fantastic. And I think this is actually in recognition of the fact that that testing is gaining its importance in the overall life cycle of not just software delivery, but of the business. Back to your point about risk, it's imperative now for us to control risk through these releases, since software is the interface to the business, number one. The second thing, and what you've probably heard, and this is what most people ask me about as I'm walking around the show floor, is our merger with QA Symphony and their Q-Test product. So the Q-Test product is really the number one agile test management framework, which does a fantastic job of managing open source tools in context of your release cadence. So as I mentioned before, you have Tricentis, which has this automation framework, which is model-based, which gives you the ability to have a low-code, no-code interaction with test, meaning that you could build really resilient end-to-end test cases very simply. And now you have the Q-Test product that gives you the ability to actually test in those more iterative fashions. And our continuous testing platform together gives you the ability to merge these cadences together to hit that release timeline that's you're expected and the business is expected. So it's pretty exciting time for us right now.
And very powerful.
Very
right?
powerful.
And very
Yeah,
powerful.
very
so
powerful.
very, very excited about that. Anyhow, Wayne, thanks.
No, my
I mean, I
pleasure.
think, when we really start to look at some of the emerging practices, we don't even call them best practices yet in DevOps, certainly looking at continuous testing
Absolutely.
as part of the heartbeat. And you're right, on the CI/CD side, in order really for CI/CD to be truly successful before and post-production, this is something I think year over year we're going to see a lot more maturity. So.
Dare I say governance, dare I say it. But,
I know, that's right, governance. So there you go. Anyhow, thanks very, very much.
My pleasure.
I really
Thank you for
hope you
having
have a great show, and really congratulations
Thank you so
on
much.
all that you've been able to accomplish. Anyhow, for those that are at the show this week, wishing you a great conference, please stop by the Tricentis booth and spend some time with them. For the rest of us that are looking at this from a stream, we'll be doing some more interviews, and I know that you have your team around here as well. Wishing you a great week and a great conference.
Thanks, Jayne.